Welcome to this short video on your authentic leadership model. We are honored that you would take the time to join us on this incredible journey on finding your own authentic leadership model. In his book on authentic leadership, Bill George describes research related to the ideal leadership model. And during the past 50 years, leadership scholars have conducted over 1,000 research studies looking for that perfect model, that ideal model, the right and definitive styles and characteristics and personality traits of the great leaders. And none of these studies were able to produce a clear profile of the ideal leader. And thank goodness, because if scholars had produced that cookie cutter approach, every leader after that would be trying to emulate that style. And using the cookie cutter approach, well, it produces cookies, not people. And you know, people can see immediately, they can see through that false or that phony style. No one can be authentic if they're trying to emulate someone else. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't learn from others. You absolutely can, but there's no way to be successful, or at least abundantly successful, if you're trying to emulate or imitate someone else. Tushar, who would you say are some of those great leaders throughout history?
That's so right, Rob. Some of the great leaders, when I think of them, the names that come to mind are Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Steve Jobs, Jack Welch, maybe Winston Churchill, and how can we forget Gandhi? Some of the other great leaders I can think of are Eleanor Roosevelt, Margaret Thatcher, Mother Teresa, Rosa Parks, and Angela Merkel, the German chancellor.
You know, Tushar, you are so right. Every single one of the people that you name is a great leader, have done great things in their lifetime. But you know, the one thing that's key there is they're all very, very different.
Couldn't agree more, Rob. Each one of these leaders had their own unique way of leading, and that's what made them successful. And the question is, if we want to become better leaders, should we imitate their leadership style? Would that even work? Obviously, we can learn from them, but that hasn't stopped people from imitating other leaders' style. So in the 80s, Jack Welch was the CEO, and General Electric was one of the most successful companies. So everybody wanted to be like Jack. And then if we fast forward a little bit, come to the 90s, one of the most successful companies was Apple and Steve Jobs' second innings. And at that point of time, in the 90s and early 2000s, everybody wanted to be like Steve Jobs. So, you know, be like Steve or lead like Jack, those would be great book titles. But the question is, would they work for your leadership? And I don't think that would work for your leadership. Trying to be someone else is not a good way to lead. And Rob, you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Tushar. You know, that leads to what we call the imposter syndrome, or it's that fear of being found out that, you know, although most people, most leaders wouldn't admit it in public, most leaders do suffer from some form or magnitude of that imposter syndrome. And when we do, it causes stress, it causes anxiety, and ultimately dissatisfaction in your professional life, which bleeds into your personal life as well. You know, on the other hand, people trust you when you are genuine, when you're authentic, that you're not some replica of someone else. Now, why is that? Why would people feel that way? Well, let me ask you this question. Tushar, I'll ask you, but I'll ask everyone who's watching. Can you spot someone who's not genuine, someone who's a phony?
Yep, in a jiffy.
Of course you can. We all can read other people. We are wired to be able to read other people, both verbally and non-verbally in our communication. And while we may try to appear to be someone else, we may attempt to emulate someone else. In the end, those false pretenses often have the opposite effect. Tushar, how do you go about determining your own authentic leadership model?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rob. And I believe that three qualities that are required to become your own authentic self and lead with more authenticity requires three things. So those are number one, courage, number two, humility, and number three, discipline. So let me kind of briefly explain each one of them. So first is courage. It takes courage to know your strengths, and everyone kind of does that. But it takes more courage to admit that you are not perfect and you can improve and you can get better. And that's part of being human. No one's perfect. Everyone can get a little bit better. Second is humility. And with humility comes vulnerability. So what do we mean by that? So vulnerability to admit that leadership is not all about you. It's not about your ego. It's about getting results for you, your team, and your organization. And today, it's also for greater good and better causes. It's not just profit, or it's not just about leader. It's also leaders at all levels. So you have to put your ego aside and show humility and vulnerability to let others lead. And third and final one is discipline, to follow the process. So, this one's obvious. So being an authentic leader is not an on and off switch. So you can't turn it on today and from tomorrow onwards, I'll lead with more authenticity. It's a process. It's a process of discovery, and it's always a work in progress, So we are, it's peeling layers of onion one after another, and then eventually we become our authentic self and are kind of comfortable with it. So courage, humility, and discipline, those are the three things. And today, we want to get you started on this journey. So you can get your workbook out. And Rob, are you ready to start the journey for our viewers today?
Absolutely, Tushar. Let's jump right in. So grab that notebook there that you have in your workbook, and let's get started. Okay, let's jump right into Module 1, Inspiring Role Models. Tushar said who he thought were some of the great leaders. Who are some of the great leaders in your mind, the ones who have inspired you throughout your life and your leadership journey? So I want you to go to your workbook, and on the left-hand side of the page, I want you to write down the names of these great leaders that have inspired you. Who are they for you? They can be people who are close to you, like your parents, your siblings, your teachers, your children, other leaders that you've had, or it can be someone that's famous that you never even met, that you just admire, either past or present, someone who's really inspired you along the way. Now, on the right-hand side, put down the behaviors, the attitudes, the personality traits of these people. What did they do? What did they think? What did they hold dear to them? This is a personal exercise. Now, I want you to be open and honest and write it all down. I want to encourage you that this exercise, I want you to take it serious. I want you, if you need to, pause the video and take the time to really reflect on these individuals one by one. Think about those behaviors, those attitudes, and those traits that are really meaningful to you. And it's also important that you realize that these very people that you admire, the people that are listed on the left-hand side, what was it that you admire about them? Those behaviors, attitudes, personality traits that really contribute to those things that you added and attribute to them on the right-hand side of the page. You admire these qualities, and you may even want to emulate these qualities. And that's the things that you want to put down on the right-hand side. You want to recognize those. And it's important that you recognize that in this exercise, it's all about you. It's not about the people that you put down. So I want you to put your name in the white box in the middle. And then I want you to strike out the names of the people that you put on the left-hand side. Because again, this exercise is not about them. It's about you. It's all about you and who you want to be as a leader. Now, in the Authentic Leadership Model Workshop, we're going to go into greater detail from this exercise. You get to reflect on the choices and the attributes that you put down. You get to share those with us as coaches. and also with your peer participants. So we're going to go into a lot greater detail in the workshop. Okay, let's jump into exercise 2. Let's explore our values. Can you name your top 3 personal values? You know, we all have personal values that we live by. It's really the guardrails that we have in life. If we listen carefully to what people say as they're speaking, we can pick up on those values. But when we ask people to name their 1 or 2 guiding principles, they often cannot clearly articulate those values. Kind of funny, isn't it, that we can pick up on them, but they can't articulate those. And that's because these values and these principles operate in the brain's subconscious mind. And oftentimes it's difficult for us to become fully aware of them. The purpose of this exercise is to help you as a leader to discover those 1 or 2 values or more that you hold dear, and to really flush those out and really begin to identify those and add to them, expand upon this. It is likely that a violation of these values takes place when you say things like, let me rethink this. Do our values come from nurture or do they come from nature? Well, the majority of people say that they believe it comes from nurture. The truth is, it's both. We get them from both our genetics. You know that because siblings that come up in the exact same household can have different values. And that's because the genetic imprint on us can be different. But there's a big component of nurture that plays into that. That's those people that we are around constantly, those leaders that we're around, those teachers, those very people that you talked about earlier as your role models. We all have a core set of personal principles and values that are instilled by us in our upbringing. And regardless of whether we are consciously aware of those or not, they are ingrained in us. They're taught to us by all of those people that we talked about earlier. Now, do you agree that knowing your core values and your principles would be very worthwhile? Could you be and receive the benefits if you could clearly articulate those values and then be able to share those with your own team? You know, as a hospital CEO in the past, I not only took the time to discover my core values, but I took it to the next step. I wrote down the definition of each of these, what it really meant to me. And then I put those on paper so that it was easy for me to share with everybody else. I always kept those in my top left-hand drawer so I could pull that out and I could show people, hey, these are my values. Often I would say, if I'm not living up to those values, it's one of 3 things. Either you don't have all the information that I had when I made a decision, I didn't have all the information that you have when I made the decision, or I just made a boneheaded decision, which I am certainly capable of doing. Well, for leaders like Malala or Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King or Gandhi, nonviolence was one of their core values. And to reach their vision, to reach their purpose in life, they made sure that their behavior not only represented those nonviolent values, but every single thing that they did shone that loud and clear to the world. Everything that they did, every decision that they made was focused on nonviolence. Companies have values too, don't they? They can be those powerful driving forces behind everything that they do. An example of that would be Ritz-Carlton. Ritz-Carlton demonstrates a great example of respect. Everything that they do, every core value that they have truly embodies the value of what they say is ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Everything that they do is based upon that. They believe that all people are valuable. Doesn't matter what role they're in, everyone is valued. So let's do a quick activity to help us discover your personal values. I want you to review this list of 25 values that you've been given, and I want you to pick the top 3 values that really mean something to you, really speak to you. Now, again, in the Authentic Leadership Workshop, we go into much greater detail in this exercise, we'll give you a very comprehensive list of personal values for you to choose from. And then you also get to, again, reflect on those, share those values with us as your coaches, and you also get to share those with your peer participants. Tushar, do you want to share the next step in this journey?
Sure, Rob. And what a powerful primer on the power of values and how to live by them. Don't they act as a compass? In the short term, if we don't have the compass, we can get lost. And then when we look back at our life, not living by your own values can create a lot of problems, unhappiness, lack of success, and lack of fulfillment for sure. So thank you for such a powerful exercise. And obviously, we'll cover a whole lot more in our actual ALM workshop where we can go into the details. So what's the next step after knowing who the leaders inspire you and why, and then what are the values that you want to live by? So the next step is the skills and competencies required for today's global leader. So leadership obviously requires certain skills and competencies. So we are going to use the global competencies of leader, we call global leadership assessment competencies. And where did they come from? So this is by groundbreaking research by probably one of the world's eminent thinker and leadership expert, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, with the research from Fortune 500 leaders on all 6 continents. So these are real life competencies of real leaders who have been successful in real life. So if you take a look at your screen, you will see 15 competencies of global leader. And if you see on the left-hand side, those are the people competencies. And if you see on the right-hand side, those are the task competencies. So they are arranged in 5 clusters. So what are the people clusters? And as you can see, it's communication, engaging people, and boundaryless inclusion. And when we come to the tasks, it's assuring success and continuous change. So if you think about it, what do leaders do? Obviously, their primary job is to get results, the business results. But at the same time, if they don't engage the people, then those results would be short term. So to have sustainable results, it's very important to engage people. And again, if you look at these competencies, the beauty of those competencies comes up. At the bottom right, if you see the key, there are 3 keys. So the first one is E for emerging. The next one is L for large gap. And then the third one is T for timeless. So I'm going to talk about each one of them a little bit. So what are the timeless competencies? So they don't change with time. So do you think honesty or integrity is important? Obviously it is, right? So those competencies they're timeless. They were true 100 years ago. They are true today. And I'm pretty sure they'll be kind of applicable 100 years from now. So you can see some of the timeless competencies out of the 15 competencies. And then the next one that are more important are emerging competencies. So hasn't the world changed a lot in the last 20 or so years? It's unbelievable amount of technological progress and then the way we live and we do business. So those emerging competencies are empowering people, leaders at all levels, and thinking globally. It's also appreciating diversity. So those are the competencies that we need today if we want to lead our organizations in a global and competitive environment. And obviously, the large gap competencies are the ones where there's a huge difference between what people say and what people do. So empowering people, I think I made a mistake. It's the large gap competencies. So which company or which CEO or which HR department doesn't talk about, we want to empower our people. But when you ask people, sometimes that's not true. So these are opportunities where we can kind of be better as a leader. And there's a large gap between what is the reality and what actually happens. So we have covered these 15 competencies. And then what we are going to do is we are going to base our authentic leadership model on these competency clusters. So now I know it sounds a little bit complicated. So what we want to do today is give you a preview, and we will just pick one cluster and go through the entire process. And obviously, in the actual ALM workshop, we are going to go through all of the competency clusters, all 5. So for today, let's, and obviously you can look at your workbook that accompanies this a complimentary webinar. So you can look at the competency of engaging people. So what does engaging people include? So this cluster includes 3 competencies. And what are those? So those are developing people, building partnerships, and sharing leaderships. So this is how you can engage people today. You can't boss them around, and command and control is long dead. So this is how you do it. So let's take the first one, developing people. So what does it mean? So you have to engage people through, number 1, training, number 2, feedback, coaching, rewarding and recognizing achievements, and basically creating an environment where people feel respected and are happy to come to work. So you can see that a leader who is competent in this area demonstrates some of those things. And the entire list is also in your workbook and on your screen, but I'm going to kind of talk about 1 or 2 of them. So ensuring that people get the training, providing effective coaching, providing timely feedback, recognition, and so on. So that's the first competency of the cluster of 3. How about the next one? So that's building partnerships. So why do we need to build partnerships? It's a really global world, no, outsourcing across the world, across geographies, cultures, and then today companies are, there's a term called frenemy, friend plus enemy. So you are competing against your competitor in some areas, but you are also collaborating with them. So you can think of Apple and Samsung. Aren't they bitter rivals? But who makes the screens for Apple? It's Samsung. So you have to collaborate not only with people within your organizations, but with vendors, with customers, and outside your organization also. So a leader competent in this area, which is building partnerships, demonstrates some of these competencies, treating coworkers as partners, not competitors, and not having a silo mentality, but working for a greater good. And obviously, you can take a look at the rest of them as well. So that's the second one of the cluster. And then moving on to the third one, that is sharing leadership. So we have flatter organizations, less hierarchy, processes are outsourced globally, operations are global in nature, and then you have to kind of disperse both power and expertise horizontally and vertically. So leaders must know their limitations. Today the work is so complicated that no one can do it alone. It's cross-functional teams that achieve those goals. And so that's why leaders need to share leadership and develop leaders at all levels. So what are some of the skills of leaders who is competent in this area? So willingly share leadership with business partners and defer to someone when they have more expertise. And think about this today. If you have been in your career for 10 years, a fresh graduate probably would have a lot more knowledge and expertise than you, no doubt about that, because half-life of a college degree these days is 5 years and shrinking. So, you strive to arrive at a common outcome with others, and not against others. So those are some of the competencies for sharing leadership. So remember we took one of the cluster, and in that cluster, these were the 3 competencies. So how do we define our authentic leadership model based on this cluster? So now that's the step 2 in your workbook as well as on your screen. So you have to answer the following questions in a quiet environment and with reflection uh, in order to gain clarity around the theme that how do I commit to developing people and partnerships? And the questions there are, the first one is, how do I make decisions and how do I share leadership with others? How do I develop and coach people? And how do I build partnerships, not only within my organizations, but with vendors, customers, and even competitors? So this we will do in details in our actual ALM workshop. But what I want to do now is show you a couple of examples of, authentic leadership models, which is just one slide of PowerPoint or one page, so you can print and share with anyone, and you can post it, and you can make sure your team knows about it, and you can point to it during discussions. So here are a couple of examples. This is the first one, and obviously you can take a look at it. It's in your workbook also. And then I'm going to share a couple of more. So these are different people, they have different roles. And so each one's authentic leadership model, you can see it's quite different. And that comes from their values, that comes from the leaders that inspire them, and that comes from their genetic makeup as to how they want to lead. So as we discussed in our actual authentic leadership model workshop, you will have the opportunity to reflect on the 5 clusters, and it will be an immersive 1-month experience, not just 1 hour to kind of come up with your own authentic leadership model. And that will be supported by online learning, so you can come prepared for the live sessions. And then you also get reflection and support and inputs from us, the coaches, as well as the peer leaders who are taking this journey along with you. And the beauty of that is that you can learn at your own pace whenever you have time to discover, define, refine, and finally share your authentic leadership model with your team. And more importantly, lead with authenticity. Yeah. So, the next ALM workshop starts soon, and the details are on this page itself. So, Rob, you want to talk about what else we will cover in this workshop and what are the benefits of that?
Yeah, absolutely, Tushar. Again, we obviously can't cover everything in this short video. So join us for the 1-month Authentic Leadership Workshop. And when you do, as Tushar said, it's self-paced. You can learn at your own pace, go with the time that you have, when you can do that. We're all different. It's a continuous learning. It's interactive. You get the support from not only us as coaches, but you really get to engage with your peer group, which is so powerful when you can do that. It is 4 live sessions, 3 hours each, and each one of those has a learning section to it, plus a question and answer time as well. Again, we can really dive in. You can never predict what that's going to be, and you can learn from the questions from everybody else. You get unlimited access and support from us as your coaches via the online platform. Plus, again, you get that robust peer interaction, that feedback, the support, and the learning from each other. So, Tushar, you want to go over some of the other benefits that they may receive when they go through the program?
Yeah, obviously. So there are a lot of benefits. See, when you have your own authentic leadership model, people see who you are, and that's everyone, And when they see who you are, they connect with you and they relate with you. And because of that, you can inspire team members and develop trust with them. And that's the key ingredient for success as a leader. And then that leads to improved productivity, and that creates a culture which kind of attracts, engages, and retains the top talent. And that's one of the biggest issues facing, today, with the great resignation as the title. And a lot of people are leaving. So people leave managers and not companies. And having your authentic leadership model will alleviate that problem and mitigate it. And it creates a positive and engaging work culture. And more importantly, you get more joy and satisfaction with your own leadership instead of stress and anxiety and worry. And so what happens with your authentic leadership model is that you define the leader that you would want to follow, not someone else, but you would want to follow. And so you can lead with it. And that's there are some of the benefits that you can take a look at on this page as well as on the slide.
Tushar, let me jump in and share a little bit about the course content.
Sure.
On the screen here, you can see, but we've already touched on some of these, but we're going to go into greater detail on these things like the most important teachers that you have in life, your inspirational role models that you've had and why they inspired you, your personal values. We talk about nurture versus nature in greater detail, the power of those personal values. We go through that greater value clarification exercise and how you're going to lead other people and task using those values. We talk about the 5 clusters in great detail. We define your own authentic leadership model. You'll do that. We'll help you. We will coach you through that. And then you'll begin to refine and finalize your authentic leadership model and be able to share it not only with on paper, but with your peers, with as your coaches, with our input. And then from that, you will prepare an action plan on how you're going to share this with your team. And then you're going to lead your team in with your authentic leadership model with authenticity.
That sounds fantastic, Rob. And let me share a little bit about our methodology and what's included. So it's an immersive experience for the entire month. So you would be connected with the community. There is a pre and post learning support through our online platform, which you get 1 month access. And you can learn at your own pace, at your own time on any device. So it's micro learning at your convenience. And then basically it's a practical hands-on workshop. It's not a training program. You walk away with your own authentic leadership model. So it includes presentations, worksheets, discussions, and online interaction continuous with peers. So you also get the interaction, learning, support, and accountability from the coaches and also from the peer leaders who will take this journey with you. There is more than 50 plus pages of worksheets and reading material that you get in soft copy, and a community of diverse group of C-suite level participants. So Rob, you want to talk about who should attend?
Absolutely. I think everyone should attend, Tushar. No, senior leaders who really want to inspire their team to a higher level of commitment and engagement. I think C-suite leaders, senior VPs, and anyone else who wants to discover their own authentic leadership model and lead with authenticity. It could be up and coming leaders. It could be those senior leaders who want to take it to the next level. And this program can be arranged for an internal company to walk in with us, just your team, where your team members in the end can discover and implement their own authentic leadership model. It's just your team. And we are so confident in this program that we offer an unconditional, no questions asked at all, money back guarantee. And this will be throughout the time of the program. And all the content that you go through and all the learning that you receive, you get to keep. So unconditional money back guarantee. Hard to beat that, Tushar.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I mean, what's there to lose except maybe learn how to lead with more authenticity? And Rob and I will be co-facilitators for this workshop and your journey towards discovering your authentic leadership model. And let me tell you a little bit about Rob. He's a senior executive and a CEO in the healthcare arena. So he has led, developed, energized healthcare teams across 7 states. And as a leadership coach, his areas of expertise include servant leadership, teams, and organizational development. His mission is to contribute to the growth and development of others through mentoring, coaching, teaching, and speaking.
Well, let me share Tushar's experience as well. Tushar has coached over 300 leaders across 4 continents, and People Hum named him as a top 100 global influencers to follow in 2021. He's passionate about leadership development, and his belief is that leadership is the best lever available to make the world a better place, and doing that one leader at a time. Both of us are Marshall Goldsmith trained, and we look forward to being your guides on this authentic leadership journey.
Yeah, we look forward to welcoming you in the Authentic Leadership Journey ALM leadership course. And remember, that comes with a 100% money back guarantee. We look forward to seeing you there.